United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, says 75% of children aged 7 to 14 years in Nigeria cannot read simple sentences or solve basic maths. Christian Monduate, UNICEF Nigeria representative, said this in a statement to mark the 2023 International Day of Education. UNICEF is calling on President Muhammadu Buhari to key into this year's theme, invest in people, prioritize education, by giving more attention to the education sector.
Well, the Chief of Education at UNICEF, Saadhna, Panday, joins us now on the news. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight.
Good evening to you and good evening to your viewers.
Great. Let me begin by asking you, how serious is this challenge you have highlighted in your latest report?
Well, it's a massive challenge. In fact, it's a challenge the world over. The world is experiencing a learning crisis. In 2015, that number was at around 53% in low and middle income countries. And in a space of 3 years, between 2019 to 2022, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that number rose to 72%. So this is not just a crisis for Nigeria, it is a crisis across the world, and it's something that needs to be taken very seriously. If children fail to learn to read in the first 3 years of their schooling career, it becomes very difficult to access the rest of the curriculum as they progress through the schooling system. So we really need to act with urgency to begin to solve this crisis.
I thought, Sander, that UNICEF is already doing something in this direction in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, with the governor there, where you have 2 streams of children between this age brackets, primaries 3 to 6, being taught English and mathematics so as to, increase their proficiency and the rest. 2 streams. And the question is, how are you, balancing this across the nation when you consider 20 million Nigerians who are out of school children and Nigerians, 20 million in total?
So you're very correct. We've been trialing a model in the northeast of the country and the northwest of the country on foundational literacy and numeracy. It's based on a model called structured pedagogy. So we work with grades 1 to 3. We train the teachers. We make sure there's good quality learning material. There's good formative assessment in the classroom. And then for grades 4 to 6, we do a little bit of remediation as well to cover up the learning loss that accrues during grades 1 to 3. Both these models have been shown to be very effective, both in the Northeast and the Northwest. And based on the evidence that has been produced through trialing of these models, we've now scaled that across a number of LGAs in 15 states. So we have the recipe, we have the ingredient, we have the methods to be able to build or to bake a good cake. Now we need to get all the actors together to come together and to bake this cake across the country. So the recipe is there. It's about scaling it now across the country. We need to make sure that we have the necessary financial resources as well as the human resources to be able to implement foundational literacy and numeracy programs across the country.
Sandy, this is a huge problem here. Ages 7 to 14 cannot read simple sentences or basic maths. From your work, what are some of the factors responsible for this? So how do we nip it in the bud? You've talked about, what is being done at the moment. However, let's understand the factors responsible for this challenge.
Very good question. So I'll start off with the biggest structural factor that is impacting access to education and the quality of education in the country. And that is the domestic financing of education in the country. Nigeria spends 1.2% of its GDP on education. The global benchmark is 4 to 6%. Government expenditure on education should be between 15 to 20%. Right now, it's sitting somewhere between 7 to 10%. 10%. Now, this is woefully inadequate to be able to confront the massive out-of-school problem and the learning crisis in the country. What is more, the country is spending between 90 to 95% of its education budget on recurrent expenditure, so things like teacher salaries, capital expenditure, and only 6% on the quality of education. So much more money needs to be spent to improve the quality of education. The second issue directly related to expenditure is that we don't have enough schools, we don't have enough classrooms, and we don't have enough teachers. So we've got to bring that classroom learner ratio down, that teacher learner ratio down for effective teaching and learning to happen. The third factor is that we have too many unqualified teachers within the schooling system. So they don't have the content knowledge or the pedagogical skills to be able to teach reading well enough. You know, reading is both an art and a science. A magic happens in those first 3 years of schooling when a teacher is able to teach a learner how to read. And the teacher needs to be well qualified to do that. The next is that the teacher professional development model that we're using for teachers within the system is very poor. We're relying on a very old model called cascade training, which is a trainer model. And by the time the science reaches the teacher in the classroom, very little is left of the substance. So we want the system to move to a school-based and a teacher-based system that involves observation, that involves communities of practice, mentoring and coaching that has been shown to be effective across the world. One other factor that I will mention is the availability of good quality learning and teaching support material in mother tongue. Right? So we've got to have materials available in local languages, and teachers must also be able to teach in those local languages and then make the transition to English right now that is at primary 3, and that is not happening effectively. So those are some of the factors that are underpinning the rates that we are seeing in the country, and we have a whole lot of effective solutions to be able to address these.
Absolutely. I know you got so much, to tell us and for us to key in and redress this imbalance and make a regeneration. I'm sure the Nigerian government will take note of all that you've said. Thanks so very much, Saadhna Panday, the Chief of Education, UNICEF, for joining us on Newsnight.